Session 3 begins our deeper dive into the ministry of the Word. Our theme passage for the ministry of the Word is 2 Timothy 3:16 and 17. All Scripture is breathed out by God and profitable for teaching, for reproof, for correction, and for training in righteousness, that the man of God may be competent, equipped for every good work. Scripture doesn't simply belong to God. It was created by God, and in fact, Scripture is God. The picture of Scriptures being breathed out by God carries more weight than a simple metaphor. Scripture is life-giving, and God gave Scripture its life, its breath. Jesus Christ is identified as the living Word, and in Jesus we find life. John 1 informs, "In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. He was in the beginning with God. All things were made through him, and without him not anything was made that was made. In him was life, and the life was the light of men. The light shines in the darkness, and the darkness has not overcome it. And the Word became flesh and dwelt among us. And we have seen his glory, glory as of the only Son from the Father, full of grace and truth." This word has been entrusted to leaders in the church who are called upon to administer the ministry of the Word. In that sense, the entire Bible is in view. But our focus in this session is on the book of Nehemiah. In the late 90s, it was my study of Nehemiah as I invested in biblical research for my Doctor of Ministry dissertation that I began to understand the importance of combining spiritual renewal with strategic initiative. The book of Nehemiah revealed that model that continues to be front and center of the Go Project process. It provides an example of how leaders are to lead through the ministry of the Word. The first chapter is of particular note, so we'll start there. The setting in time and place is that Nehemiah, serving in exile in the court of King Artaxerxes, receives a report from Jerusalem as to the status of that holy city and the Jews who had returned to Jerusalem after being released from their captivity. The report is not good. Nehemiah 1 through 3 reads, "The words of Nehemiah, the son of Hakaliah. Now it happened in the month of Chislev, in the 20th year, as I was in Susa, the capital, that Hanani, one of my brothers, came with certain men from Judah. And I asked them concerning the Jews who had escaped, who had survived the exile, and concerning Jerusalem. So they said to me, the remnant there in the province who had survived the exile is in great trouble and shame. The wall of Jerusalem is broken down, and its gates are destroyed by fire." I might characterize this description as decline in the church. Nehemiah's response to this report is both inspiring and instructive. Verse 4, "As soon as I heard these words, I sat down and wept and mourned for days, and I continued fasting and praying before the God of heaven." This is a spiritual response that serves as the starting point for spiritual renewal. Nehemiah doesn't turn to conventional wisdom. He doesn't order several books on revitalization. He doesn't attend a conference or seminar. He weeps, he mourns, he fasts, and he prays. He turns to his only real option, God the Father. Spiritual renewal. The balance of chapter 1 gives us a glimpse into the prayers of Nehemiah. I won't read that here, but in summary, he praises his great and awesome God as the keeper of the covenant. He intercedes for the sins of Israel and confesses his own sins and the sins of his family. He appeals to God's promise that he would gather his scattered people and bring them to a chosen place. This is in reference to the Promised Land, with its capital in Jerusalem, the place from which they had been exiled. As chapter 1 closes, Nehemiah's prayer shifts in both genre and tone. He moves from praise and prayers of intercession and confession to a very different kind of prayer, a prayer of supplication. He prays, "Give success to your servant today and grant him mercy in the sight of this man." As a final cadence to chapter 1, Nehemiah offers his readers an interesting bit of information. He informs, "I was cupbearer to the king." 3 questions come to mind. 1, what kind of success is Nehemiah talking about? 2, who is this man? And 3, what does it matter that Nehemiah was cupbearer to the king? What's a cupbearer anyway? These statements by Nehemiah and the questions they evoke are heavily intertwined, so I'll address them as a cluster. The success that Nehemiah is seeking is being successful with what he wants to propose to this man. This man is the king whom Nehemiah serves as cupbearer, King Artaxerxes. This is an important and trusted position. Nehemiah is the taste tester for everything that is presented to the king in the form of food or drink. A very common practice at this time was the assassination of kings and other rulers by poisoning. The taste tester, the cupbearer, takes the first bite, the first sip, and if he doesn't die from poisoning, it's then served to the king. So, what's going on in the mind and heart of Nehemiah at this time? Apparently, during those days of weeping, mourning, fasting, and praying, something has occurred to Nehemiah. He has come to realize that someone needs to take charge of the revitalization of God's people and his holy city, Jerusalem. And Nehemiah has come to believe that he is that person. But as an exiled Jew who serves as cupbearer to the king, he can't simply leave. He needs the mercy of the king and calls upon God to grant him that success. In this short sentence of prayer, we see the starting point of Nehemiah's taking of strategic initiative. Seen in tandem with Nehemiah's commitment to spiritual renewal, the groundwork is laid for spiritual renewal with strategic initiative, the Nehemiah model for church revitalization. What flows out of spiritual renewal with strategic initiative for Nehemiah? Reading further in the book of Nehemiah, we find that God does grant him success, and he receives mercy from the king. King Artaxerxes not only grants Nehemiah permission to return to Jerusalem, but essentially resources the trip, providing an escort for safety and documentation to ward off threats from others along the way. Aside from these nuts and bolts elements, which we could place under the heading of strategic initiative, another element that is directly linked to spiritual renewal is revealed. That all-important element is the hand of God. Chapter 2, verse 8 closes with, "And the king granted me what I asked, for the good hand of my God was upon me." Further, chapter 2, verses 11 through 18 reveals, "So I went to Jerusalem and was there 3 days. Then I arose in the night, I and a few men with me, and I told no one what my God had put into my heart to do for Jerusalem. There was no animal with me but the one on which I rode. I went out by night by the valley gate to the dragon spring and to the dung gate. And I inspected the walls of Jerusalem that were broken down, and its gates that had been destroyed by fire. Then I went on to the fountain gate and to the king's pool. But there was no room for the animal that was under me to pass. Then I went up in the night by the valley and inspected the wall. And I turned back and entered by the valley gate, and so returned. And the officials did not know where I had gone or what I was doing. And I had not yet told the Jews, the priests, the nobles, the officials, and the rest who were to do the work. Then I said to them, "You see the trouble we are in, how Jerusalem lies in ruins with its gates burned. Come, let us build the wall of Jerusalem, that we may no longer suffer derision." And I told them of the hand of my God that had been upon me for good, and also of the words that the king had spoken to me. And they said, "Let us rise up and build." So they strengthened their hands for the good work. A milestone is reached that we see in chapter 6, verses 15 and 16. The passage states, "So the wall was finished on the 25th of the month Elul in 52 days. And when all our enemies heard of it, all the nations around us were afraid and fell greatly in their own esteem. For they perceived that this work had been accomplished with the help of our God." Wow. Jerusalem had been in shambles for over 70 years. But through spiritual renewal with strategic initiative, operating under the blessing of the hand and God, strong signs of restoration are seen in a mere 52 days. That's the Nehemiah model for church revitalization. And the Nehemiah model is part of the ministry of the Word. Now, move on to completing the Session 3 workshop. Go for it.